very much indeed. Yes, everybody's got their different expertise, and I don't have a professional expertise, but as Albert said, I am a former civil servant. And I must say, looking at the shots we've had today of the West Wing and so on, made me feel really nostalgic. I felt very privileged to have been a Hong Kong government servant for very many years. I couldn't have imagined a more interesting and worthwhile career than the one that I did have. And of course, quite a lot of it was spent in and around the West Wing. And of course, it gave me slightly sort of warm, fuzzy feelings seeing that, because as I think as we get older, what we see in buildings is not just bound up in the building, but also bound up in our memories. And for me, that really took me back to being a young woman, meeting people, meeting my husband, who is also a civil servant, a lot of wonderful memories of working together with people, friendships and so on. Although I have to say that it didn't actually impel me to feel that building has to be preserved at all costs. And a straw poll, I think, amongst my contemporaries in civil service of the same kind of vintage, I'm afraid we would all say that's a building that we found uncomfortable and ugly. And in that, I would say I would contrast it with Murray Building just across the road, which used to be the old Public Works Department headquarters, but is now generally a general civil government building, which I think is really a truly impressive building, and I'm very glad to see that's being preserved. Now I'm a former civil servant. I find many reasons. The government was a good place to work. There were always channels, if you disagreed with people internally, to vent that disagreement. But in the end, the decision that was made had to be accepted. Now I'm no longer a civil servant. I feel free to criticise the government. I don't feel that's wrong, and I often do so. But I do have some sympathy for my former colleagues. What they have to do is actually very difficult. Once you're inside the government, you can see how difficult it is to try and take into account a lot of conflicting factors and interests, and to really make a decision that's in the best interests of the people of Hong Kong. And then I think for senior people, there are other things that just get in the way of them making a good decision. One thing is that the higher up the hierarchy you go, inevitably the more divorced you become from how ordinary people are living and how they're feeling. There are good reasons why senior government people get taken around from one place to another in a car, are always going to a restaurant where there's a nice private room or a good table booked for them. And it's very difficult for people who are very senior to live a more ordinary life, especially with all the media nowadays. I mean, I know Carrie Lam quite well, although I haven't seen her so much of her recently. And she's a very decent, down-to-earth person. But as we know, if she were to walk around now in the streets, she couldn't be like an ordinary citizen anymore. She would be somebody that people would be pointing at, looking at, perhaps wanting to come up and harass and so on, so things become more difficult. The other thing is, this is quite a difficult point to make, but the fact of the matter is that people, the general public, don't exactly know what they want. I used to deal at one time with broadcasting in the days when we were licensing cable television. And in those days, we had a lot of things to think hard about television broadcasting. And we used to say sometimes, or people used to say, why don't we just ask people what sort of television programs that they want? But of course, in a way, that's a pointless question, because if members of the public knew exactly what kind of television programs they wanted, if they were able to create a new Enjoy Yourselves Tonight, a new Below the Lion Rock, they would be doing it. Similarly, and I'm not actually at all knocking the idea of consultation or trying to be democratic, if you ask people what they want to put on a specific site, they don't know exactly. They will only probably have broad ideas about what they do or don't want. If they did know exactly what they wanted, they would be great architects or town planners themselves. So to be a leader, a public leader in Hong Kong is really a difficult task. because you have to have wisdom. If you're going to do it well, you have to have wisdom, sensitivity, and of course, integrity. And so we're trying in a way to second guess or to do what the leaders of our community should be doing. And I think that's a perfectly worthwhile thing to do. So then I tried to do what, as I say, what I would like to have been doing within government. What should we do with Government Hill? Now, and let's be sensitive about what people would like there, what they want there, because I totally agree that has to be the main question. But the issues that I'm actually most concerned about nowadays, in fact, are to do with poverty and income inequality, although I'm interested in heritage and conservation and the arts and so on. The issues of poverty and income inequality, Hong Kong Island is actually quite incidental to it. Hong Kong Island relatively, although of course you can find poverty everywhere, is actually relatively well off in financial terms. And for people to be able to come in and enjoy the amenities, if they're living in poor areas, is actually an enormous mountain to climb, because transport costs are very high, relatively, for people with low incomes, which I think is the number one problem to me in Hong Kong. Anyway, but we do actually have poor people relatively in Hong Kong Island, and these are of course the workers. And this is what I think we have to feel about. What's good for the people who work on Hong Kong Island in the central district, the central business district. And here I do feel still the same way that I felt when the questions of the Central Police Station, how it would be redeveloped, should come up, or how it should be developed. But what people in the Central Business District really need is more